Hi guys, upon opening your assignment for today, you should see this screen on your Jamboard. The first thing we're going to do is go over two problems from our Unit 1 test. So if you would open Test 1 Overview, the Google Doc that was posted under Week 6, we're going to do number 3 and number 4. You also need to sign into the testing site if you have not gotten the answers that you put for those two questions. And also get your journal so that way you can use your checklist from last class and the slope notes that we took. Okay, I just wanted to show you in Google Classroom to remind you that under week 6, the Unit 1 test overview is there. That's where the Google Doc test corrections will be and the website to sign into the testing. So if we look at problem 3, we are finding the solution set for this inequality. So remember, solution set is the answer, right? We want to know which values will satisfy our inequality. Okay, so remember, I like to start off by rewriting it. So that way I have this space to work, right? Okay, split up your problem. Okay, so that way you can look to the left side, you can look to the right side. Okay, I notice I don't have anything that I can simplify, right? So I'm going to start rearranging my problem. I'm going to do opposite of this -4 on both sides. Okay, so I'm left with a negative 2x on the left. My symbol's facing the same direction, right? Bring down my negative 4x. And then right here, a positive 8 minus 4 leaves me with a positive 4. Right, so I'm going to move my negative 4x to the opposite side by doing opposite direction, right? So I'm going to add 4x to both sides this time. Okay, so on this side, a negative 2 plus 4 gives me a positive 2x, right? Symbol still facing the same direction. This simplified over here on this side to be 0, so I'm just going to bring down my 4. So now I have to divide by 2 on both sides. Simplifies on this side, so x is greater than 2. So my correct answer would be F. Remember, we go and double click our post-it. You can erase what is on there. Type the F, hit save. We are done with question 4. Okay, so if you remember from last class, our checklist was to label the x's and the y's, to plug them into our slope formula, and then to simplify. Okay. So in looking at this slide here, I would like you to pause, take a moment to look at the 3 different representations: a graph, table, and then 2 points, ordered pairs, right? And I want you to answer this question right here. What do these 3 points have in common? So if you look at my sticky note, I added on, I would have liked for you, right, that they each have the points 2, 3, and 6, 5 as part of them. Whether it's a table, right, we see 2, 3 right there, 6, 5. My ordered pairs are given, right? I can see them listed there. But on the graph, if you notice, 2, 3 is plotted, and then 6, 5 is also plotted. So each representation uses the points 2, 3, and 6, 5. Okay, so the way we find slope when we have a graph, right, we haven't talked about it, is rise over run. Right, we can count our rise over our run, and we're going to go more into detail about that when we start finding slope from graphs, but I just wanted you to have the idea, okay? Or we can use our slope formula, right? Because we have our 2 points, we can get the coordinates of those and plug them in. Okay, when we have a table, the way we find slope is by the slope formula. Okay, because we get our 2 points from there. We label x, y, plug them into where they belong in the formula. And then when we have 2 points or ordered pairs, right, the way we find slope is by the slope formula. Okay, and the table and the 2 points are what we're going to be looking at today. Okay, so if you notice here, I just enlarged your slope formula. Remember, we find this on the star chart, so it's not something that we have to memorize, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to take our 2 points, 2, 3, and 6, 5. We're going to follow our checklist. So we are going to label the x's and the y's. So if we label x, y, x, y, okay, then I'm also going to change the color of the post-it notes, right? I'm going to change these to pink, so I'm going to make my x's pink. I'm going to make my y's blue, just so that way you can see that there's 2 different numbers there, okay, and where they're going to go plugged into my formula, right? Remember, it doesn't matter which ones are our 2's or which ones are our 1's. What matters is where we plug them into the formula. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and drag. I'm just going to use this as the first y2, okay? So I'm going to take my 3, I'm going to drag it to where it goes. So then that means the other y has to be here. Okay, because I pulled the 3 from that first point, I'm going to have to take the 2 because that's what it was paired with originally, right? So I'm going to take that 2, drag it to where it belongs. Then I'm going to take that 6 because that was paired with my 5 originally. It's going to go below it, okay? And this is how we would set it up. Remember, please remember that it is minus on the top and the bottom. It's set up like a fraction, so we would simplify the top part. 3 minus 5, I get a negative 2. Keep it as a fraction, right? 2 minus 6, I get a negative 4. So if I simplify that, I get a positive 1/2 as my slope. We can keep it as a fraction, okay? We did do this example last class, but I wanted you to see it with color and how we label the points and how we're able to drag them to where they belong, okay? If you move to slide 8, okay, we're going to do another example of finding slope from 2 points, okay? So first step, I'm going to label my x and y. So x, y, x, y. Okay, I'm going to plug those into my slope formula, but before I do that, I need to know what my slope formula is, right? So I'm going to say m is equal to, remember it's a fraction with a minus on the top, minus on the bottom, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, so I'm going to go plug them into where they belong now. I'm going to use the first y just because I saw it first. So I'm going to do 3 minus a negative 1. Okay, because I started with 3, I have to start with negative 2 as my x, right? So negative 2 minus the other x is 4. Okay, guys, notice how when I set it up, it has to be minus on the top and minus on the bottom. We plug in our numbers the way we see them, right? So I took my 3, I plugged it in. I had a negative 1, so I plugged it in as a negative 1. Okay, if you're going to do this work in your head, okay, you have to remember that a negative and a negative turns into a positive, right? Negative and a negative turns into a positive. So when you are trying to do that in your head, you have to remember that one rule, okay? So if I have on the top 3 plus 1, I'm going to get a 4. Okay, on the bottom, negative 2 minus 4, right? It's going more to the negative, is a negative 6. So I can simplify that fraction, right? It's going to make my whole fraction a negative. If I divide the top by 2, I'm going to get a 2. If I divide the bottom number, the 6, by 2, I'm going to get a 3. So my slope is a negative 2/3. Okay, if you're going to use Desmos, you can just type this in as you see it, right? You can type in 3 minus a negative 1 on the top of your fraction, and you can type in negative 2 minus 4 on the bottom. But the downfall about Desmos is that it's going to give you a decimal. So I would work out the top of my fraction first, I would work out the bottom of my fraction second, and then I would simplify. Okay, so let's double click here so we can type in our answer. Negative 2/3, hit save, and we are done with example 2. If you move to slide 11, we're going to do an example it starts as a table. Okay, so we are still going to label our x's and our y's, right? So I'm going to say x, y, x, y, and it doesn't matter which 2 points you use from the table. I'm just using the first 2 because that's just automatic for me to go use those 2. Okay, so I'm going to set up my slope formula. M is equal to fraction minus and minus, right? So y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1. Okay, so now I'm going to go find my numbers. I'm going to use the first y just because I see it listed first, right? So I'm going to set it up. So minus on top, minus on the bottom. I'm going to take that 4. I'm going to subtract the next y is a negative 2, right? Plug it in how you see it. Okay, so because I started with 4, that means I have to start with negative 3 on the bottom because it's the pair, right? So negative 3 minus the next x would be a 0. Okay, so remember I said if you're going to do it in your head, we have to remember the rule that negative negative turns into plus, right? So work out the top. 4 plus 2, 6. Okay, on the bottom, negative 3 minus 0. You're not taking anything away, right? So you're still left with a negative 3. This can simplify, right? This fraction can simplify. It's going to become a negative. 6 divided by 3 is 2. So my slope is a negative 2. So we'll double click on our sticky note to type our answer, negative 2, save, and we are done with our examples. Okay, now you have to go to, well, you've got to finish the rest of these slides, right? So there's a few slides for you to work on, and then you are finishing or you're working on your Khan Academy assignment. Okay, there is an assignment posted in Khan Academy. If you look at Google Classroom, it will tell you specifically what you have to do.